Hello, and welcome to the Don't Forget the Human podcast. In the race to embrace AI for IT operations, cybersecurity, finance, and business management, one simple truth is often overlooked. AI is only as good as the data you feed it. This episode today is going to explore why continuous data collection and defining normal behavior are not just IT hygiene, they're the foundation for everything to do with AI operations, from zero trust to cloud management. And for small businesses, getting these basics right is the key to unlocking the full potential of AI powered future automation, decision making. Excited to dive into this today, Lucas. I know you have a lot of thoughts about this and experience in your line of work. So, what are you thinking about operations and AI?
I think the idea behind this discussion about we need to collect data and continuously collect data and monitor ourselves is we're trying to improve using AI. So just like if you're going to the doctor and you're saying like something's not quite right, I want to feel better when I'm doing X, Y, or Z. They might collect blood samples. They'll weigh you, measure your height and all of the baseline data to say like, okay, this is normal today. Let's make sure we're improving in these ways, or um, whether it's your blood sugar levels or all sorts of different things. Um, and so I'm gonna shoot it over to you with just this idea that like, what do you think about like AI? Not AI is not magic. AI needs to learn from patterns. Have you seen that come up in your own work?
For sure. I think just the fact that the majority of the content of information on the World Wide Web right now is AI generated, and it's not primary source material, it's not human generated data. I think that is hugely problematic. And the more you can get your hands on real behavior, real data, real voice, conversations, training metrics, things like that, that are actually being generated by humans, I think that data is going to be a lot more valuable. Um, Even doing research on the internet right now is a little bit unstable, I think, because you're collecting data that was collected by a human and then interpreted by AI and then maybe interpreted by a second layer of AI. So we're kind of talking about getting back to basics, right? And getting your hands on real data.
Yeah, exactly. And then talking about these, capabilities that might seem like not even like far-fetched, but like more powerful, like I've heard this buzzword come up recently, AI ops. So we've got like SecOps for security, fine ops or FinOps for finance, and AI ops would be the idea that maybe you have these AI triggers that are saying like, okay, I've detected some behavior that's an anomaly. This person always logs in 9 to 5, but last night they logged in at 10 p.m. and downloaded, like a terabyte of data. Like that might be a simple example that like, an IT person would just catch, but if we're talking like at scale with tons of data and tons of users and tons of interaction, you kind of want like some kind of like filtering of that and like actionable insights coming from that. And that's kind of the idea behind this.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're also getting at the difference between a rules-based automation and an AI insight, which should be more robust than a rule-based automation, right? So if you have a rule that says if someone logs in after 5 p.m., I want to get a notification or a trigger about that. But an AI analysis might be able to consider the fact that his supervisor wrote him an email at 3 p.m. and asked him to be there after hours, and so that behavior was kind of normalized, or we didn't worry about it because there were, parameters kind of around that irregular behavior. So I think hopefully the idea is that the AI is doing some better anomaly detection and pointing out actual risks and not just out of the norm behavior that might have triggered a rule in the past.
Yeah, and I think in the last episode, we were talking about or it might have even been a couple episodes ago, like, are you micromanaging AI? Are you letting it make decisions? And, like talking about AI agents. I think like you might want like an AI ops to say like, I've shut this person's access down, but I'm notifying you. So like I've already, I've mitigated it for now, but I'm giving the human authority at this point. And maybe in the past you wouldn't have wanted like an automatic system because of the reasons you already mentioned, like there are exceptions. But just maybe just like, oh, I've done some baseline actions already to, to help with this before a human gets hands on it.
Oh, for sure. Or even an admin can, in a chat-based dialogue, say something like, "Hey, my six-man team is going to be working the weekend, and I've given them permission to do so." And his, credential and identity management would allow him to make that exception just via a chat. Um, so yeah, I think about, how this actually hopefully makes life easier and makes the workforce have these tools be a bit more accessible and for those exceptions to be documented in real time and not be this cumbersome. Oh, I've got to turn off the monitoring because we're going to be working over the weekend and I don't want it to produce 10,000 alerts.
Yeah. And like, so going back to, let's emphasize like collecting data today and beginning to build this picture of like what is normal behavior right now. I think like in the past we would have been apprehensive of like, okay, how are we collecting all of this? Is somebody putting it in Excel and hand jamming it? Like, is anybody even analyzing it after the fact? Now we have things like, every Teams meeting on Microsoft Teams we're on, it records a transcript. That would have never been practical in the past. So that's like one form of data collection we're doing already, but like what are some other ways that you can just collect this like that might have seemed like unnecessary in the past but can help in this AI future?
Yeah, but before we get to kind of the future of data collection, because I think, we're seeing things like wearables, a necklace that's going to record your 24/7 conversations and movement. What did history look like, right? What did what have you observed to happen with those logs and those anomalies and those notifications in the past? What was the old construct and what does the potential new construct look like of actually taking action and analyzing those logs?
I think the biggest like point I would make is that like a lot of times that would have been like reactive, like, okay, so say there's like no logs at all, like something breaks, like, some IT system goes down, and then everyone's like kind of just standing around like, okay, I have no idea what happened and I don't know how to fix it necessarily. So the idea behind like, okay, like let's collect all these logs, and then when something breaks I can say, okay, let me look through this, like maybe it's like difficult to parse data, or it's just not user friendly, or there's just no way to like really display it in a clean way. So you only look at it when you have to, and so I think we're looking at like more of like a proactive stance, like with maybe the logs are revealing things that I need to change now to prevent something from happening.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think about is it better, right? Kind of like setting the not necessarily lowering the bar for what we expect from AI, but if in the past you had the logs and you never looked at them, and now you have the logs and you can say, every morning, hey, what were the most important things that happened last night? And then AI delivers you an imperfect picture of, here are some things you should probably look at, and then you actually pull the thread on those and go pursue them. I want to kind of celebrate that win, right? Of, hey, now we've got someone looking at least some of the insights and, there is some mechanism for elevating activity and taking action. And, I think it's easy to kind of say, well, AI is imperfect, and how do you know it's choosing the right things to bring to your attention, et cetera, et cetera. But what it looked like before and what it looks like with that AI enablement, I see improvement. And I kind of want to be able to celebrate that as we go and then build on it and get better. And, if there are outcomes that are coming out of it, reduce costs and fraud, or, reduce cyber remediation activities, or whatever that looks like, you can measure those things over time and prove out that it is actually helping your organization and improving your process.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, maybe we're not always like the most scientific, like, I changed this variable and it resulted in this improvement, or, you know, it can kind of be like vibes based a lot of times with like, humans are fallible, and, we change things and we don't necessarily track the data after the fact, but we can kind of like make things more scientific and more measurable and, more quantitative looking at AI tools.
Yeah, so looking out for those change makers and organizations that are kind of stepping out, making a recommendation to use AI, and in some way putting themselves at risk, for exposing the organization to a new tool or incurring a new cost. What are some ideas around what that individual can do to set the baseline of what it looked like before and what it's going to look like afterwards, to really kind of celebrate and document those wins?
Um, I think we even talked about internally this week about let's collect how long these manual processes take. Like how long did we spend, you know, inputting customer data, or, you know, moving files from here to here and things like that, that if we do have like a use case where like, oh, AI is going to, you know, kick off this process and then push it to the next person who can, like approve or deny it, those kinds of things. Like if we're going to change something, yeah, let's just for 30 or 60 days, just simply start, logging these things, how long things take, how many people interacted with it. And then like the KPIs, like at the end, like, are we successful today doing this or not?
Hmm. And thinking about automation as well, I think that's my mind goes to what's scary, what's perceived as high risk, what is going to prevent people from using these tools. So where does your mind go when you think about what is the biggest risk to automation? So you've got AI ops happening and it's detecting interesting information, and it has the ability to take action, right? What does that best case scenario look like? What does that worst case scenario? And maybe what are those things that you're most empowered to say, AI, please definitely take action on these things, because those are definitely going to help us.
Yeah, I think worst case scenario, kind of what I was hinting at, where it's like it's not scientific, and it's maybe we call it like kind of a black box where, I push a button and then I don't know what happens in the black box, and then an outcome happens at the other side, and I don't know if it improved things like we talked about, we want to get better. I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if it's worse. Like think about like when you go get an eye exam and they're like, okay, left eye, right eye, which one's better? And it's how stressful it is, like, oh, did I make the right choice kind of thing. Um, so I think like worst case scenario, you've got this like opaque system making choices on your behalf, and then at the end of the day, it's still not apparent that it's better, So best case scenario, we decide on those key performance indicators, SMART goals, like whatever we want to happen more of. Like I want more emails to go out to partners. I want, you know, quicker invoicing, things like that. Um, Collecting, oh, this is how fast things are happening now. This is how we're hitting the goals now. And then saying, okay, like these numbers are going up as a result of like, this with maybe scary or different or new tool AI ops.
Hmm. Yeah, I just think about those things that, don't hurt and I definitely want more of, right? Like, let's say there's a data breach happening right now and someone is either deleting an entire library, maybe intentionally or unintentionally. A lot of insider threat activity is not intentional. It's an accountant accidentally click delete on the library. And, I think an automation that would pause deletion of the accounting SharePoint library would be something that would be beneficial. And um, worst case scenario, you have to go back and talk to an admin because you did mean to delete and migrate or whatever the case was. But I can definitely see lots of instances where I would trust the automation and then worry about kicking it back on if it was something that you meant to do and it wasn't a mistake. But think about the downside of the data breach, or you've lost important financial records, or you've inhibited someone's access in some way. I think what we don't want is that AI is just shutting people down all the time, and then it's locking people out and making people worry about whether or not they've been fired because they show up on Monday and their account's locked because they triggered something. um, yeah, I think that could definitely be damaging to people if they felt like there was a lack of trust or you didn't know who was making decisions about your accounts.
Yeah, totally. And another thing that comes to mind on like, what does it look like today and what it might look like in the future is like, um, right now it's like, okay, if I want to set up like an automation, my data not only needs to be like up to date, but formatted in a very particular way. And like, we might need to spend a lot of time like cleaning up the data, like labeling it, mapping it to various things. And I think like that is very technical and it kind of takes it out of like the decision maker's hands at a certain point because it's like, okay, now I want my data people to have hands on this. Whereas like right now we're interacting with AI in like a very like human way where we're talking to it and asking it questions and things like that. Like I feel like that's kind of what we want to move more towards where it's like I don't care, like I know that I'm collecting a lot of data for my day-to-day, like from the meetings and from the emails. And yeah, you mentioned like, oh, maybe an email to a supervisor is like an important thing that can trigger things. um so just like thinking about collecting a lot of data but not necessarily thinking about like, oh, did I put it in the right spreadsheet kind of thing, like
Mm.
unstructured data.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's this like push and pull, maybe on all IT, but now particularly with AI, where you want to balance accessibility and usability for the average user, but also governance and rigor and protection. And I feel like we're leaning really heavily into democratizing it and more people having access and more people building and just kind of pushing decision making down, right, to where um, the not only does your CFO have access to the AI tools, but your AP, accounts payable, data entry person has access to it too, and what problems they can solve at their level. But then you also have an analyst, feeding very sensitive proprietary information into maybe an untrusted AI model. Um, I feel like I just have a very, very high risk posture to some of those things. Like I'd rather the employee feel empowered than my data be protected. And I'm not talking about personal like PII, social security numbers and things like that, but even my financial records. We were talking about this the other day. I email them to my CPA. I email them to my bank. I email them to the government. We've submitted it in many, many proposals where they ask for to validate contractor responsibility. We'll email our financial records. We'll email our facility clearance verification documents. And sure, we might password protect it or use DoD safe or but let's be honest, like a lot of times the government won't accept password protected documents or they won't accept it via encryption and you just got to email it, right? So, it's like if I'm exposing myself in these scenarios that don't really help me, but they're necessary for my business, can I also expose myself to make processes 10 times faster, enable someone to learn something, or enable an analyst to make a CFO type decision because they've got the information at their fingertips? So, I'm sure people are gonna say, hey, you're taking too much risk, but I feel like there already is a lot of risk. There already is a lot of vulnerability. There's a lot of exposure. And, I'm willing to take that same level of risk and exposure to, put some jet fuel in my company.
Yeah, totally. Like just the idea that, look, I think a lot of this, what we're talking about is like just like knowledge management and like things that kind of like we do a lot of these actions to make sure, oh, the company has this knowledge in the future that they might need, or we can make these decisions and look back and etc. But it's a lot of the times it's kind of hypothetical and you can't take like clear action on it. But yeah, I think just empowering people to, use the data more and use the knowledge management systems more is, powerful. Like we're in this, IT service economy. So that's what's, yeah, you said jet fuel. That's what's the jet fuel.
Awesome. So what are some things that get you excited about the future and what you're going to be able to accomplish in AI ops?
Um, for me, I've thought about it in like a personal way, like how like journaling helps like on a cognitive level, on like, a mindset level, but what can I create kind of this baseline for myself of like this is a normal week, this is an exceptional week, this was a week with more challenges than normal, that kind of thing. Can I kind of like use this same idea of using the information to empower decisions for my personal life and that kind of thing?
Hmm. I think we've all seen that Black Mirror episode of having your entire life recorded and being able to look back and do the play-by-play.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, perfect memory, huh? That's where we're kind of getting to.
Yeah.
Do we want what are the risks of a perfect memory?
Yeah, I'd like to delete some things probably.
Yeah, I think of work versus personal, and I think I do want a perfect memory at work, right? I want to know every single person I've talked to this year, where I can best follow up, where I should spend my time. I think it gets a little tricky at home, right? Like we have this is kind of a silly application, but we have a ring camera. If you got a ring camera in your living room, I bet you've done the playback, right? Saying who wrote the marker on the wall or where did I misplace my keys? I mean, at least we do that in our household. If I lost my keys, sometimes I'll go back and look at the reel and try to find them. So, um, having a camera in my living room, it's been net positive, I think. I can't think of a scenario where it's gotten touchy. I think, you have to have trust and all those things of who has access to that data. Um, and it is somewhat of a vulnerability, right? Someone could hack into that and have access to all that movement and our whereabouts and things like that. But for me, it's improved my quality of life.
Yeah, and just imagine if like you said, hey, like analyze the past year, give me recommendations. It's like, oh, move the couch 2 feet this way because, of X, Y, and Z, or, you know, oh, if you turn the light off, you would save this much money, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, and this is taking a couple steps forward in what the future of tech could look like, but I'm sure you've heard of like mind memories and people doing memory mapping and things like that. Well, you could do that with your actual modeled on your actual home of, make me a mind map based on my living room. and things you actually touch and feel and interact with every day. So I think there's a lot of cool use cases. You're gonna see me as one of those early adopters wearing the wearable OpenAI device. I'm super excited to see where Johnny Ives and Sam Altman go with that, and I can just raise my hand and say I'm gonna buy it, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing about this topic. I think it's really interesting, and look forward to next week.
Totally. Thanks.